Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Bruno and the Professor. Welcome back, Professor.
Welcome back yourself, Bruno.
We're getting a little cozy today
That's
here
right.
on the video. So those of you who are watching us on YouTube, maybe if this actually ends up working, we're trying another thing. So we've been trying the Skype thing. We're trying the in-person video. We'll see. Something will stick eventually. We appreciate you bearing with us in this period of technological experimentation and innovation. That's where all the good stuff happens.
That's right. Absolutely. I heard this YouTube thing is all the rage these days. So
yeah, the kids are doing it.
We're a little ahead of the game in terms of podcasting. I think we actually were podcasting before podcasting was a thing, and now we're old fogies, Bruno. We've been podcasting, and now video casting or vlogging is all the rage. So.
Well, and hopefully we our voices for radio and our will translate into the television era, the talkies era. You never know.
That's right. Just don't burn the lens.
So let's see. So we got a lot to talk about this week. We should probably start talking about the jobs report. So we had a jobs report this month. We get the jobs report every month. We know that we need about 90 or 100,000 jobs gained per month just to tread water. We know that we probably need several years of several months, if not years, of 400, 500, 700,000 jobs created a month just to get back to where we were before the recession. And yet this month we had another weak report. This kind of seems to be a pattern in the spring. We had 88,000 new jobs, which is not nearly enough. And yeah, there's a couple people are kind of have some various reasons for why this might be the case. So is this just seasonal adjusted demand, or are we just in our kind of spring swoon, or is there more going on here?
Doesn't look like it. I tend to be among those who believe that this reflects more general underlying weakness in the overall economy. I think that the job gains of the last few months have really masked some really fundamental structural problems in the economy. Now, one of the interesting things I think about March's report is that the first instinct might be to say, well, okay, at the beginning of the month you had the sequester kick in. So if that were actually the case, then what you would expect to see is that the sectors that were either federal government direct jobs or were related to the federal government would have been the sectors that showed the most weakness in the jobs report, and that doesn't look like it's the case.
Right.
Of the 88,000 jobs, something like only 2,200 of the lost jobs in March were actually federal jobs.
Right. So I think so the other thing that we could be seeing coming into effect is the end of the payroll tax cut as part of the fiscal cliff deal in January. We ended the 2% payroll tax cut. If those of you watching your paycheck probably noticed that you are now paying the full 6.2% contribution to Social Security instead of the 4.2% you were paying last year. That could have taken a hit out of people's wallets, and then could have affected things like retail jobs and things like that, right? As people are spending less, so you could see some of that stuff going on. I think that's probably there's probably the case to be made that some of that's going on. But I think you're right. I mean, I think this is we're at a point where the economy is so kind of lukewarm right now that any little teeter can kind of send it one way or the other, right? Because we're not doing the kind of robust job growing measures that we should be doing. We're not doing the kind of spending we should be doing. Despite the fact that the Federal Reserve has poured a ton of money into the banks, they're not turning around and lending that the way that we thought that they would, or some people thought that they would. And we still have these kind of contractionary, budget policies happening and fiscal policy happening where we're cutting jobs at the state level. We're even, the sequester we're talking, it looks like, the sequester that was supposed to be the Obama-quester end of the world, everybody just said, okay, that's going to happen. So sorry, done. Let's move on, right?
Yeah.
There's whether or not it's actually we can pin it on any individual policy. I mean, the point remains that we're not doing things. We're not doing that much to help the economy at this point.
No, I think you're absolutely right. It looks like it looks like the economy is suffering from sins of omission rather than sins of commission on this one. And I think that's absolutely right. I'll use a term here that we haven't heard in the news media for a few years, but I think it's just as valid as it was a few years ago when we first started to talk about it, and that's liquidity trap. And essentially what you have right now in the U.S. is a situation where you have interest rates that are effectively zero. You have household saving rates, which have actually gone up since the recession started. And so you've got an economy that's essentially flush with cash right now, but no place to put it. So you end up with a stock market that's probably overinflated. You end up with a property market that is, showing signs of reheating, but for no good reason. It doesn't really seem to be driven by demand per se.
I saw an interesting piece recently about how in the next couple years, I don't know if we talked about this last week on the show. In the next year or two, we're going to see the people who had their homes foreclosed on in 2007 and 2008 at the beginning of the crisis are going to have waited. It usually takes 5 to 7 years to repair your credit after a foreclosure like that. So those people are getting ready to come back on the market.
Yeah.
Their credit scores are finally good enough. They declared bankruptcy. They lost their house. They waited it out. They want to buy a house. I mean, they were homeowners. And they've been sitting on the sidelines or renting, unable to get credit. But at some point, they're going to be looking to buy houses again. And so you're going to see this kind of – you're already seeing – I mean, there was a piece in not too long ago, I was just reading about Phoenix and how Phoenix is just, it's boom times again in Phoenix, because they underbuilt for 5 years.
Yeah.
Right. And so now supply is catching back up with demand and it's going back to crazy town again, in terms of, you add that to the fact that Phoenix can bring on new supply. One of the reasons Phoenix had a bubble is because it's able to bring on new supply at a fantastic rate because they basically just carpet over the desert with cul-de-sacs.
Right. Totally.
It's super easy. Like in places like Seattle, in San Francisco and Boston, New York, you can't do that kind of stuff, right? So you end up with these just like superheated markets and no place for it to go because nobody wants to see the kind of redevelopment that's necessary. Nobody wants to see their neighborhood kind of transformed or whatever. We talked about the South Lake Union development.
Yeah, God forbid, 5,000 people should lose a partial view of the Space Needle
in exchange for
unless we actually have
more
a
jobs and
property
public
market,
services and a better economy. I get the whole okay, you're going to lose your view, but what you're going to gain is a much healthier city. Whatever.
Yeah, totally.
But that's I don't want to get off
fight
on
the battles you need to. Right?
Yeah, no, I don't want to get off on that too much. But so we had the spring adjustment. Now we're kind of turning around and we're getting back to budget season. We talked a little bit, I think, in the last couple shows about the president. So the Republicans put out their budget, quote unquote, which is basically the same budget. They get Paul Ryan to kind of change the name every 6 months, but then he puts out the same budget. It's like, I got a new idea. It's called Tax Cuts for the Rich, and the poor can go suck it, And he comes up with a new name for this. It's the Path to Prosperity, but it's basically the same agenda, which is cut taxes on the rich, cut spending on Medicaid, and hope everything works out. And